Good mythical afternoon. This is Mr. Ayala coming live from his dining room on a beautiful Sunday morning, and this is the Civil War, the Battles, Part 1. There's two vlogs for this week. They're going to be separated into two different things. One due one time, one's due at a different time. Please pay attention to all the labels and everything so you know what's going on. As always, please make sure you're writing your notes and then you're paying attention. And of course, you can review this as many times as you like to get your information that you need to be successful in my class. At the end of this vlog, there is not a comment section this time. Oh boy, just please make sure to write your notes. I will leave a comment section open for you guys to discuss this if you like on your own, but I'm not going to be taking credit off of this part 1. Part 2 will have your vlog question that needs to be answered down in the doobly-doo so that you're able to get your points for part 1 and part 2. And remember, write your notes. If you don't write your notes, you can't use it on the test or on my final. So you got to have those notes, and they need to be handwritten for you to be able to use them. So please make sure you're doing that. As always, sit back, relax, and enjoy the presentation, and always write these down for your notes. Hint, write them down. Get a piece of paper, something to write with, pen, paper, onto paper, or pencil onto paper, whatever you need. Get it written down. So, the Civil War, the battles. So, where we left off last time is the South has seceded from the Union because Lincoln has won the presidency in December 20th. South Carolina of 1860 officially secedes from the Union, and then in April of the following year of 1861, Lincoln takes office, and he has this problem. The Confederates, or the CSA, starts taking over all the federal property in the southern areas, in the southern United States, or in the Confederacy, depending on how you look at it. And there's one place called Fort Sumter, South Carolina, was in Charleston Harbor, and this was the first battle of the war. What happened was they were running out of food, and the Union officers were sending messages to Lincoln going, help, we need food, we need resupplied, or we need to be evacuated. And the rebels are surrounding us. And what ends up happening is the rebels do bombard, the rebels win, but there's actually no deaths. So this is actually the official first battle of the war. From there, the people start beginning to choose sides. Lincoln calls for the states to start bringing out their militia. Robert E. Lee, who would have probably been Lincoln's main general if he stayed in the Union, joins the Confederacy when Virginia secedes. The border states are states that were slave states but stayed in the Union. They are Missouri, Kentucky, West Virginia, Maryland, and Delaware. Make sure you write those down. That is super, super important. So now we're going to look at major strategies. The Confederate strategy is to stay on the defensive. Hope the North would tire of the war and make peace. And get foreign help because of the trade in cotton. Because at the time, Egypt and the southern United States were where the majority of the cotton was located. And most of the world got their cotton from these two sources. So they're hoping that by, controlling the cotton trade, the South can get help from European powers like England, who still wants revenge from the American Revolution. While the Union, or the North, wants to bring the South back, and they use this thing called the Anaconda Plan, which more or less which calls for a blockade of all ports and to gain control of the Mississippi. More or less, they want to squeeze the life out of the southern states by controlling the trade, by not allowing any ships to get in and out, by not allowing any ships to go up and down the Mississippi, more or less make their exporting economy come to a halt. From there, we get to what's known as the First Battle of Bull Run, also known as Manassas in the Confederacy or in the southern states. And what this comes to is this wanted to be more or less the one big battle that ends the war. That's what the Union wanted to do. They wanted to take Richmond, Virginia. On July 21st, 1861, First Battle of Bull Run's fought at Manassas. The CSA General Thomas J. Jackson held his ground, and from this time, he's known as Stonewall Jackson. And what Stonewall did is, as the Union Army were rushing his lines, he held it like a stone wall, where he gets his nickname. And the mix of his actions, his ability of not budging and making sure the defense was solidified, and the rebel yell would help the South win this battle. And it showed that the North has underestimated their opponent. The North has more people, more industry, more railroads, more everything. But they're still not, they don't have as good generals, and they're not defending themselves. And you got to understand, defense usually has a better position than offense, just because it's much easier to entrench yourself and get yourself in a place, and someone has to take you out and move you instead of doing the hard part. This is just a little battle. This is a painting of the second battle Bull Run in 1862, which we'll look at a little bit later. Then we get to the CSS Merrimack, the Virginia versus the USS Monitor. And in 1862, these two ironclads fought off the Virginian coast, and it becomes a tie. We're going to look at this a little bit more in depth in class when we do my Weapons of War presentation. The Union General Ulysses S. Grant wins in the West. General Grant failed about everything during his life, except at war. That was the one thing he was good at. He's not a good gambler, not good at that. Well, but he was a great war fighter. And what he did, he was in charge of the Western campaign. He beat the Confederates in Tennessee, including the Battle of Nashville. In April 6, 1862, U.S. Grant versus C.S. Johnson at the Battle of Shiloh. William Tecumseh Sherman does participate, and he actually had 3 horses shot out from under him and continued. The Union wins this battle, but the biggest issue are look at these casualties. Over 13,000 Union casualties, which is about 25% of their army at that time, or that regiment, fought and died, and the rebels about 11,000. Or 25% of their regiment was destroyed. And that's a huge casualty problem. And you got to understand, in normal warfare, you're not supposed to have more than 10% casualty rates. That's considered an okay rate. We're at 25. That's huge. From there, we get to the fall of New Orleans, or New Orleans, as some of you really like. April 25th, 1865, New Orleans, Louisiana, fell to a Union fleet. So what happened was the Union blockaded, put all these ships all around the southern coast, and they blockaded New Orleans. And what happens is the Union actually does amphibious landing and uses their gunships to bombard New Orleans. And when they capture that, Jefferson Davis's wife stated, New Orleans is gone, and with it the Confederacy. Are we not cut in two? So what does this mean? Why is New Orleans so important to the Confederacy? I mean, here's a hint. It's a delta. There's a major river its delta is located in New Orleans. Remember go back, look at why we bought Louisiana from France. That would help you actually recognize why we need this. The CSS Lee wins in the East. This would be the Virginia area. The Confederate States win at the 7th-day battle and the second battle Bull Run. And this stops the Union General McClellan from invading the South for now. So this was their second real invasion, and the North fails at this. Lee invades Maryland, hoping to convince some Europeans to back the Confederacy, and that also fails. Lee's very good on the defensive, not so good on the offensive. McClellan and Lee meet on September 17th of 1862 at Sharpsburg, Maryland, also known as the Battle of Antietam. This is the bloodiest battle of the Civil War, and no one had a clear victory. But Lee did retreat after losing about a third of his force. Can you imagine? 33.33 repeating % of your forces destroyed. McClellan is fired from Lincoln for being too slow and not chasing Lee, because they could have defeated the rebels, the Confederacy, the South at this time if McClellan didn't sit on his hands and wait forever and ever and ever for all this stuff to get going. So please be aware of that. That's the end of this one. I will leave the comments open for you all to discuss and talk about this, but there's no requirement for this one. As always, please make sure you have written your notes, because there will be a pop quiz on this coming up on the day after it's due. So, as always, don't forget to be awesome.